It's the morning of August 24th in the year 79 AD. You're a baker named Marcus, and this morning looks exactly like every other morning of your life. You wake before dawn, start the ovens, and by the time the sun is properly up, the smell of fresh bread is already drifting down your street in Pompeii, a busy, prosperous port city of roughly 12,000 people, tucked beneath the green slopes of a mountain everyone simply calls Vesuvius. Nobody in your city thinks of that mountain as dangerous. It hasn't erupted in living memory. Vineyards climb its lower slopes. Shepherds graze flocks near its summit. To you, it's just scenery. The same familiar shape you've looked at every single day since childhood. Your wife, Livia, is already awake, getting your daughter Aula ready for the day. Your elderly neighbor, Senecio, shuffles past your bakery window on his morning walk, same as always, offering the same tired joke about your bread prices that he's made nearly every day for a decade. Down the street, a vendor named Flavia is setting up her stall in the forum, arranging fruit into careful pyramids the way she always does. It's an entirely ordinary day. You have no way of knowing that you have somewhere between 18 and 24 hours left before your city stops existing. Around midday, something changes. It's subtle at first, easy to dismiss. A slight tremor rattles a shelf in your bakery. Dust sifts down from a ceiling beam. Small earthquakes aren't unusual here. The region has felt them for years, including a much larger one 17 years earlier that damaged buildings across the city. You brush the dust off the counter and keep working. Senecio, passing by again, mentions offhand that his water jug tipped over on its own. Neither of you thinks much of it. Then, in the early afternoon, people in the street start looking up. A column of ash and debris begins rising from the summit of Vesuvius, climbing with a speed and scale that doesn't look like anything either of you has words for. Modern volcanologists, reconstructing the event centuries later from pumice deposits and eyewitness accounts, would eventually estimate that the eruption column shot roughly 14 miles into the sky within a matter of hours, releasing thermal energy roughly equivalent to multiple nuclear detonations. You don't know any of those numbers. All you know is that the sky over the mountain has turned the wrong color, and it's getting darker by the minute, even though it's the middle of the day. Ash begins falling on Pompeii like gray, gritty snow. At first, it's almost curious rather than frightening. Something people brush off their shoulders, laughing nervously, comparing notes with neighbors. Aula thinks it's strange and a little exciting. Livia is less convinced. Within an hour, the ash is falling heavily enough that visibility drops, streets grow eerily quiet under a thickening gray blanket, and the air starts to taste wrong. This is the moment that determines who survives and who doesn't. And historically, it split the population roughly into two groups. Some residents, watching the ash accumulate and hearing the distant, continuous rumble from the mountain, decide immediately that this isn't a normal earthquake and start moving toward the city gates, taking only what they can carry. Livia is one of these people. She wants to leave now, immediately, gathering Aula and whatever food and water you can grab. Others, including, according to the archaeological record, a significant number of Pompeii's residents, chose to wait it out inside their homes, either underestimating the danger, hoping it would pass like previous tremors, or simply uncertain where safety even was in a situation nobody alive had ever experienced before. Senecio decides to stay. He's old, his joints ache, and the idea of walking miles through falling ash doesn't appeal to him the way it might have decades earlier. He tells you he'll wait it out at home and see how things look by evening. It's the last time you see him. Flavia, in the forum, makes a different calculation. She abandons her market stall entirely, something she has never once done in years of running it, and starts moving toward the coast, hoping to reach a boat. You and your family choose to leave. This decision, more than almost anything else that happens over the following hours, is the one that ultimately determines whether your family survives this story or becomes part of its casualty count. Leaving Pompeii means walking through streets rapidly filling with ash, roofs beginning to groan and occasionally collapse under accumulating weight, and a sky that has gone fully dark in the middle of the afternoon. You wrap cloth over Aula's face to help her breathe. Livia carries what food you manage to grab. The road out of the city is crowded with other families making the exact same desperate calculation, all moving in the same direction. Nobody entirely certain where they're actually going, only that staying feels increasingly impossible. Pumice stones, light and porous but falling from a genuine height, begin striking the ground and occasionally people hard enough to cause real injury. The noise is constant now, a low, continuous roar from the mountain, punctuated by sharper cracking sounds that might be thunder, might be rock, might be something breaking somewhere nearby that you can't see through the ash-thick air. By nightfall, though night barely means anything anymore since the ashfall has already blotted out most natural light for hours, the eruption enters a new and far more dangerous phase. What volcanologists now call pyroclastic surges begin racing down the mountain's slopes. Fast-moving currents of superheated gas, ash, and rock fragments moving at speeds that can exceed 100 miles per hour and reach temperatures well over 300 degrees Celsius. These surges are what ultimately overwhelm Pompeii and the neighboring town of Herculaneum, not primarily the falling ash itself. For those who left early enough and got far enough away, this final phase becomes a story of survival, however traumatic. For those still in the city, including Senecio, and likely thousands like him, it becomes something else entirely. Archaeological excavations, beginning seriously in the 18th century and continuing today, would eventually reveal the shape of that ending with haunting precision. Voids left in hardened ash where human and animal bodies had decomposed, later filled with plaster by archaeologists to recreate the exact final postures of people caught in their last moments. Some huddled together, some seemingly caught mid-motion, frozen in postures of protection, of covering a face, of reaching for someone else. If your family made it far enough from the city before the surges arrived, you survive. One household among the substantial portion of Pompeii's population who managed to escape, scattered afterward into nearby towns, their old life buried under meters of ash and pumice, preserved with an accuracy that would let people study it in extraordinary detail nearly 2,000 years later. This is where the story stops being about one eruption and starts being about something more universal than a single volcano. Nearly every account we have of Pompeii's final hours describes the same basic human pattern. Warning signs that seemed ambiguous in the moment, a mix of people who acted immediately and people who waited, and a narrow, unpredictable window between those two choices that ultimately decided who got a future and who didn't. Nobody in Pompeii had the vocabulary of pyroclastic surge or eruption column height. What they had was falling ash, a strange sky, and an old, familiar mountain suddenly behaving in ways nobody had a framework for. We tend to imagine ourselves as the people who would have left immediately. Clear-eyed, decisive, moving the moment danger became visible. The historical record suggests something more uncomfortable, that the line between leaving and staying often had less to do with courage or intelligence, and more to do with how ambiguous the danger looked in the exact moment a decision needed to be made. So the next time you see something small and easy to dismiss, a strange sign, a subtle shift, a warning that doesn't yet look like an emergency, remember Pompeii. Remember that an entire prosperous city, full of people who'd lived beside that mountain their whole lives, had less than a day to figure out that ordinary life had already ended, whether they recognized it yet or not.